For this little tutorial, we're just going to go over these sets of dried lungs. So here we have a pig over here. This one is an equine from a pony. And then we have a bovine over here. So these have just been inflated and air dried, and we'll take a look at the different parts of these. Here we have the pony specimen, the inflated lungs. And so here you have the trachea that you can see here, and that will branch into the left and right primary bronchi. And in the equine, we have just a left and a right lung, obviously. All species will have that. Here we're going to start on the left side with the left lung. We have a cranial lobe and a caudal lobe. So they're mainly just regional in the equine. There's no very differentiated lobes. So you just kind of go regionally that this would be cranial and this would be caudal. Then on the right side, we would have cranial, caudal. So cranial lobe, caudal lobe. And then if we flip it up, we can see kind of on the underside that we have an extra lobe on this side, and this is the accessory lobe. So here if I point to it, maybe my hand won't be in the way here. Right here is accessory lobe. So in the equine, very simple, and just those cranial and caudal parts, accessory lobe on the right side, and then left side just has cranial and caudal lobes. And now we'll move on to the bovine. Here's the bovine specimen with the inflated lungs. We have the trachea that you can see here, and that will of course branch into the left and right primary bronchi. In the bovine, we also have a tracheobronchus, which I'll point out at the end of this, and we'll take a closer look in there. But first I want to talk about the lungs themselves and look at the lung lobes. So here you have the left lung and the right lung. We'll take a look at the left side first. So we'll look at it from the lateral side here. So in the bovine, we have cranial lobe and caudal lobe, just like we did in the equine. However, in the bovine, your cranial lobe is differentiated into cranial and caudal parts. So here you can kind of see this little division right here. So this would be the cranial part of the cranial lobe. This is the caudal part of the cranial lobe. And then you have the caudal lobe back here. Then on the right side, I'll turn it the other way. And here on the right side, you will have a cranial lobe again, where you have cranial and caudal parts. So here, you can see right here is the differentiation. So you have a cranial part and a caudal part to that cranial lobe. Then we also have a middle, which in this one is a little bit hard to see, but you can see this extra piece here. And so this is that middle lobe. Then you have a caudal lobe, which is the very large one here. And then we have accessory. So here you can see that accessory lobe. So again, on the right side in the bovine, we have cranial, middle, and caudal, as well as accessory. And then that cranial lobe has cranial and caudal parts. And then on the left side, we just have cranial and caudal. So cranial and caudal lobes, but the cranial lobe has cranial and caudal parts. And now we'll move on. Oh, hold on, before I move on, I want to show you the tracheobronchus. So we'll take a look at that a little bit closer in here. So here we're looking from the ventral view on the bovine, and we're looking at the trachea coming down here. And you see where it splits into the left and right primary bronchi, but you also see that there is a tracheobronchus. And the pig will also have one, and we'll see that in a moment. But this is the tracheobronchus going to that right cranial lobe of the lung. Here we have the pig lung that has been inflated, and we have the trachea coming in, and then that will branch into left and right primary bronchi. And the pig also has a tracheobronchus, which we'll look at the end. But first we'll look at the right and left lungs, and we'll start with the left. So on the left side in the pig, very similar to the bovine, where you'll have a cranial lobe and a caudal lobe. But the cranial lobe will have two parts. So you'll have a cranial part and a caudal part in the pig. So cranial lobe, caudal lobe, and then a cranial and caudal part to the cranial lobe. Then on the right side, on the right lung, here on the right side we'll have the cranial lobe here. They have a middle lobe and also a caudal lobe. Then on the underside here we can see that accessory lobe that's also part of the right lung. So in the pig, On the right side, you have cranial lobe, middle lobe, caudal lobe, and accessory lobe. Then we'll take a look at that tracheal bronchus, just a little bit closer view here. So here we're looking from a ventral view, and you have the trachea coming in, and you have the left and right primary or principal bronchi. And so you can see those going to left and right lungs, but you also see that there's a string around the tracheal bronchus. And so it goes to the right cranial lobe, and this is the tracheal bronchus with the string around it.